Hello everybody, I'm Arden. Welcome to another episode of Minecraft Enigmatica 2 Expert. Today, we're going to do some mopping up while I wait for materials to roll in so I can actually finish up my Draconic armor set. And as such, I figured we would revisit the quest book and see what we haven't done. And one of the things we haven't done is finished out Extra Utils 2, which is mostly relatively easy at this point other than one item, the rainbow generator. But first, let's start with over on the left side and clear out these miscellaneous devices, starting with wireless RF, which wants us to make a battery and a wireless RF transmitter. And as you're going to see in almost all these recipes, this is dead simple to make at this point. So simple, I just went ahead and made them. Now, we should probably talk about these because the wireless battery stores up energy to be sent out to the transmitters, and the transmitters give it to a block. But the catch here is these can only transmit 80 RF a tick, which makes them not great for my purposes, does it? Now, I would like to be clear, these probably would have been useful if I'd made them a long time ago, but the throughput really isn't all that great. It's only useful in the extremely early game, and unfortunately you need 82 parts to be able to make it in the first place. Because the wireless RF transmitters do require a wireless booster from AE2, which isn't hard to make, but does require you already have bootstrapped into that. And frankly, once you've made a flux network, it invalidates all of this anyways. So, moving along. Which brings us to the mechanical user, which we've already made, because they're just made from automated users, which we've put a ton of, haven't we, over in my Singularity farm. Following that is the scanner, which we've also made, because it's sitting in my Atomic Reconstructor automation setup, I believe. So, that's all finished at least. Moving on to the generators, and starting with the second row. We'll do the heated redstone generator. And frankly, almost all these generators are going to be more of the same thing. It's going to be a previous trivia generator surrounded by a bunch of random junk that we can easily afford. I'll pretty much only point out recipes that are weird at this point though, because these are all going to be simple. And what this generator is used for is pretty much exactly what it claims. It uses lava and redstone to generate a not insignificant amount of power. But obviously we don't need this. So the next one is the potion generator. And this one pretty much does exactly what it claims. It burns potions for power. In some cases, a not insignificant amount. But that would require automating the creation of potions, which is not... It's doable, but it's not exactly easy. And this is one of the complicated ones, which is one of the reasons we won't be really making use of the rainbow generator. And we'll be getting into that in a little bit. But following that is the pink generator, which is just made from pink things. I just wanted to show that because it's kind of funny. And of all these generators, this is the funny one that I really enjoy, because thematically it's completely on point, because it burns pink things for power, or apparently dirt for some reason. But the list almost solely consists of things that are made from pink, and pink dyes for the most part, which is completely automatable. I just think this is funny. But it does require automating some sort of pink dye, which isn't entirely the simplest thing in the world, because there is some randomness involved with most, but not all of the dyes, although this one isn't too bad. Moving on, we now have the Overclocked generator, which is a bit like a normal generator, except it's horribly inefficient. It generates a lot of power, but burns a lot of materials, because you can pretty much chuck whatever you want in it, and it will burn it for 67 RF at 4,000 RF a tick. And obviously you can speed this and all the other ones up with upgrades from Extra Utils. So it can generate a lot of power very quickly, but it's going to be garbage. But you could hook it up to a big cobblestone generator and it would actually be pretty decent. But we're not going to do that. And instead we're going to move on to the explosive generator, which I have used in the past on a mob farm, and it's actually pretty decent at its job. Because this one does almost exactly what it claims. It takes an explosive item and explodes it inside the generator. You do need to be a bit careful with this one. It won't damage structures as far as I remember, but it will hurt players when it's blowing up the items. But as you can see, it takes TNT or gunpowder and turns it into power. I was just taking like the gunpowder from my creepers coming in my mob farm to power the mob farm itself, and it actually worked really well. This should be needless to say, but I put it in a small compact machine to not hurt myself. And now we move on to the Frosty generator, which is another one that's more or less exactly what it claims to be. It consumes cold things, ice and snow and whatnot, which are all pretty easy to automate if you've got the resources and machines to do it. Following that one is the Slimey generator, which you will be shocked to know consumes slime balls. I know, I didn't see that one coming at all. That's the big, huge twist ending here. But then I guess the real twist is that it also requires milk. I have no idea why milk is involved with this. It's a weird one. Which is the part that actually makes it a little bit of a pain to automate, because then you have to get cows involved, and so it means to milk the cows, and it's just... but it's doable. And now onto the penultimate row, starting with the Disenchantment generator. And this one's a bit more complicated. I'm just showing you this because it requires magical wood, which requires experience, and an enchantment table. So still pretty simple to make at this point, but does require experience. Oh, fine. Or I could remember that you can just use an Extra Utils 2 enchanter to do it and not use experience if you want to do it the easy way. And I suppose I should note that this is where the automating of these things starts getting more complicated, because this one works off of disenchanting things. And it explicitly requires books, and these do generate quite a bit of power in some cases, but it requires you strip enchantments off something, put it on books, and then put it through this machine. Now, we could do that with our mob farm pretty easily. That would actually wouldn't be too hard to do, to set up, but it requires effort, and it's not consistent, and you never know if you're going to have enough enchantments around unless you've got a really high throughput mob farm. It is what it is, man. It's doable, but it's a lot of work. So now we'll move on to the Halitosis generator, and this right here is the main reason we are not even going to bother trying to use the rainbow generator, because this one pretty much can't be automated in Enigmatica 2. There's probably some way, somebody's probably really smart and found some way to automate respawning the Ender Dragon and gathering its dragon's breath and killing it. I am not that smart or dedicated, and I don't want to spawn a whole bunch of them to go gather a bunch of breath and just have a giant stack of it around to run this thing. It's just not worth it to me, guys. There's so much easier ways to get power in this pack than this that it's not even on the list. But it's called the Halitosis generator because it consumes dragon's breath for quite a bit of power for quite a bit of time. So it's not a bad generator if you are committed to gathering this stuff, but there's no way to create the dragon's breath, and there's no easy way to farm it in this pack. Which leads us to the death generator. And I've got to be clear, this one, while easy to make, it's really easy if you have a mob farm, is super far into buyer beware territory. It consumes mob parts basically, but do not come within anywhere in a small radius around it, because it will inflict you with doom, which will kill you a minute later. And I mean, if you forget that this is happening, have fun dying. It's actually worse than the explosion generator because yeah, this just outright kills you. You can at least survive that one. But as I said, it consumes like bones and rotten flesh and skulls. It's not terrible if you have a mob farm. It's another good one to power it with, just like the explosion one that I was doing. So just be aware that you can't stand next to it at all. Which leads us to the last of the normal ones, the Netherstar generator. And this one is worth bringing up because this one is complicated. It requires Wither Ash, which that part's not hard, enhanced Ender Ingots, which we can make now, same with the Ender Star, some Redstone, and a Draconic Evolution generator, which thankfully isn't that hard to make at this point. The main thing is just the Draconic core. But if you can't make this one early in this pack until you've started Draconic Evolution. But depending on what your rate of Netherstar generation is, this is one of the things that people will say is a really good generator to use, especially if boosted by upgrades. Because obviously, given the name, it eats Nether Stars. It eats them for nearly 10 million RF at a fairly decent tick rate, and if you speed it up, this goes much faster. So don't discount this as a decent generator, and I might actually hook this up. This isn't terrible, and I do have Nether Stars rolling at all time, and I can automate Nether Star creation off a seed if I wanted to for mystical agriculture. But we're going to back this up for now. And we're going to go talk about the giant elephant in the room with the rainbow generator. Because this is the hardest part to make in Extra Utils 2, and we sped through all the rest, but this requires some discussion. Because this is deceptively hard to make because it requires a Draconic Flux Capacitor, which, well, we can do that now. It requires these rainbow generators top and bottom, which are just all of the other generators that we've got lying around already. A couple of ultimate upgrades, which we can do those. We've got that completely automated. And then these Opinium cores, which thankfully it only requires the good cores, but these are kind of expensive to make, especially if you have to go higher, because they require cores from the previous tier, which requires core and all the way down. And this requires red coal, which I'm going to have to go grab some out of my tree farm, but I do have this made. But those can get expensive pretty quick, especially since there are some higher ones. Specifically, there are some weapons in Extra Utils 2 that look relatively mundane when you look at them, like this is kind of high damage. but it requires the perfected Opinium cores, which require Netherstars, which aren't even the hard part here for me. It's actually the step below it, which is the amazing one, which requires Elytras, which we'd have to automate the creation of. The trick with the Extra Utils weapons, though, is that you can stack double enchants on them. You can actually take them up to basically level 10 enchants. It's pretty busted, but you would need something to put them on, and since I'm going to use the Draconic Evolution stuff, those don't take them. But they are extremely powerful if you do want to stack them up. We'll probably discuss that when I go fight the Chaos Guardian, because you can use equipment other than the Draconic set if you know how the fight works. Anyhow, I need to go automate those first sets of cores and then slap together all the pieces, so give me a little bit. Alright, so let's talk about this monster for a little bit here. First thing, in the making of it, when making the red coal, you'll notice that I have this recipe that says burn time 1600 ticks, and what's actually being output is burn time 12,800 ticks, which these two items are not considered the same. So make sure your recipes account for this with either this object as the final one for the actual cores, or setting it for fuzzy matching. I had some issues getting this to work correctly, and even here when I have the recipe switched out, it still doesn't think it's done. So that's a problem. 2, we got a couple bonus quest completions because I forgot we hadn't actually made the flux capacitors yet. So those are also done. And 3, we probably should talk about how this thing works, because it basically produces vast, almost unlimited amounts of power. I believe it generates something like 25 million RF a tick. It might be 15, I can't remember. For all intents and purposes, it does not matter because it's basically infinite. So you have one of these running. How this works is if it detects all the other Extra Utils generators running at the same time, this starts running, which means none of the others need to be running efficiently at all, and they only have to be running once within the same 10 tick period. So you can actually throttle things like the potion generator, which is probably the worst one, no, that's not true. The Halitosis generator is the worst one, but you get the idea. You can throttle these with redstone signals to turn them off so that they don't consume all of their power, to delay the consumption of the fuel, which matters for the ones that are a gigantic pain or very nearly irreplaceable in the case of the Halitosis generator. So these are very, very good if you are inclined to be the sort of person who's willing to set up the sort of automation it would take to make this work, or are willing to set up an extremely large battery to store a vast amount of power and then never worry about it again. So, don't get me wrong, this generator is absolutely phenomenal. I'm never ever going to use this probably. Never say never. I'll probably end up doing it at some point, maybe, just for the challenge of it, but between me and you, I'm not doing it this series. I've had enough challenges. But that closes out Extra Utils 2, folks, and now all that's left is to claim all of these, get our green checkbox, and open up all of the garbage. Alright, everything claimed, and now we have the green checkbox. Now to wade through the trash. Overclocker upgrades, which I'll take for free because they're kind of a pain to make even with it all automated now for the most part. Titanium coins for the generator I never made. Oops. More coins that for the generator I still haven't made. Soul sand, which is insulting. Another one of the wild, I think that's number 4 or 5. Tesla coils to defend us from the ravaging horde of cats behind me. Eyes of Ender, which are also insulting. A dragon head, which I guess. Man of Steel, which is insulting. A pot, which I guess. Another free ender pouch. Another scanner that we don't need. Conversion kits, which aren't useful, but at least will save me a couple parts next time I have to make a machine. Food. Iron casings, which, as said, can be replicated, so I can make whole stacks of these. I would rather have gotten food. I wish I had a flint and steel on me. I would just set that on fire. Also insulting. What am I talking about? I have a wireless crafting terminal on me. Problem solved. Anyhow, if you found this episode interesting and entertaining, please consider leaving a like or subscribing if you're new. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.